So we've been in a Tier 0 format for a while, and some people were worried we were going to continue to be in a Tier 0 format with tier limits dominating, even with Kashtira on the way in Photon Hypernova, which is set to release later this week. OTS 21 leaks came out, which had a bunch of foil upgrades for tier limits, among other things. People were wondering whether or not that meant the deck was going to be hit as a sign of things to come. In the past, OTS packs have typically indicated what things might see some list attention. So we've got a new ban list that was dropped about 25-30 minutes ago, and we're going to jump into it with today's video, so let's get to it. So just quick before we jump into the actual video talking about the February 2023 Forbidden Limited List, just want to thank everybody for checking out the video. If you guys do enjoy what you see here, please hit the like button and subscribe. Click the bell icon if you want to stay notified, and keep up with Loveshack on social media. You can see our primary socials there. Go ahead and give us a follow, stay up to date with information on new videos and such. So yes, February 2023 ban list is the topic of today's video, and it is a doozy. So let's jump into it, starting off with the Forbidden section. First up on our list is Artifact Scythe. This one has been talked about for a while as a card people wanted to see hit. During the DPE format, it was very heavily played in many different packages, and of course Halki-Fibrax getting banned limited how easily you could do that, but Scythe was still an extremely problematic card for some that just wasn't at the forefront because of how good tier limit was. So good riddance to Scythe. Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds is a big hit to Fluandereeze while not killing the deck entirely, but it was definitely restrictive and a card that just some decks had really no way to play around, and I can't say I feel all that bad to see it go. Tier Limit's Kitkalos is definitely one that people were talking about for a possible hit, along with Instant Fusion. We did not get the Instant Fusion hit, of course, but it may be fine. Kitkalos is definitely one of the best individual pieces for Tier Limits, and a very, very easy combo starter for the deck. So hitting this, kind of falling in line with what the OCG did, does not surprise me. We didn't see any even real value in Kitkalos being like reprinted. It was like a $2-3 card, so there's kind of no sweat off Konami's back from a value perspective. No real shocks here. I'm just glad they made the right call. And the last Forbidden card, of course, is Sprite Elf. I did not expect this one. I thought they might hit Sprite a little. Banning Elf was not what I foresaw. I do know Elf has, some application in other decks as well. It is a really, really good Link 2 monster, but I didn't see a ban on the horizon for it. So it's going to be interesting because Sprite loses a huge piece. I don't even know what Sprite decks will look like without Elf going forward, but I suppose we will have to wait and find out. The Forbidden section is relatively small, but all the hits are big and do a lot of necessary maintenance for the game. I think people will generally be happy about this. Obviously, some people are going to be a little bit upset about the fact that Sprite Elf is banned, but we'll have to wait and see what that does to Sprite. And of course, if it does prove to be too restrictive for the deck, they could always bring it back at a later date. Next up, let's take a look at the limited section. Of course, cards that go to 1. Pretty sizable from what I saw taking a glance at this, but it's going to shake up the format without a doubt. The limited section always ends up being the most interesting and or telling part of a list in most cases. Obviously, bans are significant, but we often see things peel off and come back, or cards get hit to restrict consistency without killing a deck, and they may have done that here. Looking at the Forbidden Limited card list, we've got YuGiOh the Ancient Sentinel, Kelbeck the Ancient Vanguard, and Keldo the Sacred Protector. All three of the primary Ishizu fairies were hit. These were really, really strong in tier limits, of course, but were definitely played in other decks as well. The Naturia deck was playing this, the Vernalizer fairies to some extent. So these hits are, warranted, but a little surprising. Magnificent Mavens came out a couple months ago, so enough time has passed. I definitely was expecting those hits. Medora the Sword Oracle gets hit along with them. And then we've got Tier Limits Havnus, Tier Limits Merly, and Tier Limits Sheeran. So in addition to banning Kitkalos, they hit all of the tier cards except Rhino Heart to 1 and hit the Ishizu package. So the deck right off the bat is losing approximately 14 to 15 cards out of the main deck. Just in time for Kashtira, of course, to be coming out, and we know there are tier limit Kashtira builds that are like a combined sort of hybrid build, but you definitely have to wonder what those are going to look like with this many restrictions. Of course, OTS 21 does have super rare upgrades of all of these, and it's funny because now they are, of course, banned, or not banned, limited, sorry, but of course, OTS 21 does have foil upgrades for the 3 tier limits monsters that are in here on the limited list, so it really is kind of funny how it's become a bit of a predictor on what things they're going to hit as it gets close to a list. Lastly, we've got Ancient Fairy Dragon coming to one, and I don't know if I ever talked about the errata in a video, so for those of you unfamiliar, we are just going to quickly recap it. Ancient Fairy Dragon got an errata recently, and this will be effective as of March 10th in the TCG, so Ancient Fairy Dragon will not be legal for tournament play until that point, which leads me to believe that at some point soon, we'll be getting that retrained version of Ancient Fairy Dragon. But here's what it says. It is a tuner, one or more non-tuners, that's the same. You can only use this card 1 and 2 effects each time per turn. During your main phase, you can special summon a level 4 monster from your hand. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. And then the other effect says can be activated during your main phase. Destroy all cards in the field zones and gain 1,000 life points. After that, you can add a field spell with a different name from the destroyed card from your deck to your hand. So, Ancient Fairy Dragon's previous effect was a little bit different in the sense that you could add any field spell from the deck to the hand. That was the primary change that they made here, and of course, making these a hard once per turn means you can't loop other copies of Ancient Fairy Dragon. This coming back to 1 is cool. I do think the card's definitely a bit neutered from where it was before, but still sort of a nice card to see come back, and I'm sure it will find its use in certain decks. So the limited section as a whole is really the tier limit show, and of course, if you're an Naturia player, I guess you just took, Friendly Fire. But this is going to shake things up quite a bit here as Kashtira comes out, and we've got other decks that are, on the horizon, looming as things that might, be vying to take a spot in the meta as there is going to be an opening. It is most certainly not going to be a tier 0 format anymore, so it's going to be really, really cool to see how this actually shakes up the game. And finally, we've got the unlimited section. There are no semi-limited card changes on this list at all. Pot of Desires remains at 2 for some reason, but the unlimited section does have a few noteworthy cards. First off is Destrudo, the Lost Dragon's Frisson. Destrudo's typically played as a one-of. If you can resolve him, get him engraved, you don't normally need multiple copies because he is a hard once per turn. But in decks that, if he's getting banished by the Bestials or called by the grave, there may be scenarios in which you want to have an extra copy depending on how dragon or, synchro heavy your strategy is. So nice to see Destrudo come back to 3. Jet Synchron is unlimited, and this was banned prior, so they peeled this off. Hulk's banned now. There's really no reason for this to be on the list anymore. Still a good card, but nothing crazy. Mecha Phantom Beast Olion was also the same fate. That was on there because of Hulk, and now we see that it has come back to 3. No harm, no foul. They didn't give us back Glow Pulp, interestingly, but I guess that's, another topic for another day. Serpent of Endymion has been at 1 for a while and comes back to 3 as Pendulum starts to pick up some hype. However, Kashtira is a direct counter to Pendulum in some ways, being able to lock out the Pendulum zones, so I guess Endymion's really not going to be a huge threat in this format, but something to keep an eye on. True King Lithosagam the Disaster was, I also believe, at 1 as well. With the new Dino support that we just got announced that I've got coming an upcoming video for, you guys take a look at that. Maybe that card will find a place there. The Dino stuff is, really good, and Lithosagam at one point was a ban-worthy card. I think we've moved past that stage of the game, but we'll have to wait and see. Yatagarasu comes back to 3 after peeling off and doing nothing, which doesn't really shock anyone, but it is crazy to think that Yata is now a 3-of in a deck if you really wanted to play it. Never really thought that day would come, but the game has certainly moved to that point. And finally, Spiral Resort. This is kind of a little concerning, but not that big of a deal. I think Spiral's still so far away from being able to do much of anything at a high level, especially without all of their other cards at, 3. So I'm not too worried about it. I think this is a pretty, not the craziest, unlimited section, but there are some things that might shake the meta up a bit. Overall, this ban list is a big one, especially as there are multiple YCS events on the horizon and a new set coming out. It's going to change things up in a really, really interesting way because we might see some significant shifts in the meta. Will tier limit still hold on? Does this open the door for decks like Pearly to have a chance to slide in and get a rogue spot or even to be a somewhat meta-relevant deck option now that a lot of these other decks have been scaled back? Are the Bestials still going to be like a mainstay in the main deck with less tier limit, presence? And let's not pretend that tier can't still play, but these are a lot of hits, and it's definitely going to make the deck, if anything, more of a package deal. Maybe King of the Swamp becomes more prevalent again than any of this like we've seen in the OCG. So that's going to do it for this video talking about the February 2023 ban list. Let me know what you guys think of the video in the comments down below. Are you happy with these hits? Obviously, if you weren't a tier limit player, you might be. And what do you think is going to end up taking the top spot in the meta going forward? Will it be Kashtira, or are people a little bit overhyping that? We'll find out, but thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.